What's up, everyone? Thank you for returning to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be covering everything you need to know about accessing your Home Assistant instance remotely. As with everything else, we'll cover the fundamentals of setting up remote access, as well as some of the security issues to bear in mind. There are various ways to accomplish this. However, in this video, I'll only be focusing on one technique while briefly discussing the others. This one step can significantly improve your Home Assistant experience, and it's quite simple to do. So, if you're ready to get started, let's go. Okay, before we get started, I just want to offer you some background context since I don't know where you might be coming from. So, to enable remote access, you have two options. The first requires a public-facing IP address with port forwarding, which is a way to make a computer on your local network accessible from the internet. The second is a tunnel. Now, several ISPs employ CGNAT or double CGNAT, known as carrier-grade network address translation, to mask their clients' IP addresses. This just enables them to restrict their public-facing IP addresses and is the most likely obstacle you will face. Every ISP is different and may or may not permit you to obtain a public-facing IP address, which is required for remote access to your Home Assistant instance for a number of the options available to us. But you can call your ISP's tech support and just find out if that's the route you are going. Now, thanks to tunneling, we can circumvent those restrictions and do so in a more secure manner, in my opinion at least, as we're not opening any ports. Okay, so before we get into the demo, let's talk about the methods we have available to us. And I can't emphasize this enough. You really need to keep security in mind and decide your own comfort level with opening up your network to the public, because a secure home network is essential. Remember, you're opening up your network to the wonderful people of the internet, and only the nicest, most kind, caring folks use the internet, right? They would never exploit vulnerable networks to commit a variety of cybercrimes, such as installing malware, data or identity theft, or creating botnets, among other countless activities, right? Wrong. They will, and they do. So please take security very seriously. Okay, so the first method and the easiest to set up is Nabu Casa from the developers of Home Assistant. And I would choose this option if I didn't like to torture myself and wasn't so cheap. Well, no, really. I just like to self-host things myself as a way to learn. But this option does end up costing more than the other options we have available to us. But you won't have to do any of the mucking around that I'll be showing you. Plus, they have a few extra features included, so there's something to be said for that. This method requires no open ports that I'm aware of. And some of the added benefits of using this, as I said, is you can easily connect to voice assistants, and you get access to their neural network for text-to-speech. The second method is to use DuckDNS with Let's Encrypt. Now, this is a 100% free solution, and this method may be used with a purchased domain, and there are numerous guides and YouTube videos available to show you how to do so. So DuckDNS is used to point your public IP address to the IP address of your Home Assistant instance, and it will automatically change your public IP address for what the free domain, and they use your username.duckdns.org, points to when that IP address changes. As you will most likely have a dynamic IP address, unless you have a special use case for a static IP address, one that doesn't change from your ISP, but they will charge for that. Also, this method does require you to open up ports. You can also use a paid service for routing called Amazon Route 53. It's not too expensive from looking at their pricing structure, and it is very similar to DuckDNS. Our third method is to use a reverse proxy. And we'll use that reverse proxy with a public-facing IP address from your ISP and your domain, and or a routing service like DuckDNS or Route 53 as well, if you're not paying for a static IP address, but those are optional. And again, you can find many tutorials and guides on YouTube in order to set this up. Just know that you can use regular Nginx to accomplish this, but someone has already written a terrific application that does precisely what you want without having to configure Nginx, which is this lovely program, Nginx Proxy Manager, and it's included in the Home Assistant add-ons, so you don't necessarily have to self-host this. You can have it hosted on your Home Assistant instance, but again, this requires open ports. Now, the fourth and final method, which I will show you how to do, and is my recommendation, is setting up a Cloudflare Argo tunnel, which is very similar to Nabucasa. However, in contrast to the other methods, setting up a tunnel will allow you to access your Home Assistant instance without having to open any ports on your router or publicly exposing your network. The process for setting up an Argo tunnel is relatively straightforward, and this method is for the folks out there who can't get a public-facing IP address from their ISP, are blocked by CGNAT or double CGNAT, or just don't want to deal with the hassle of open ports and routing services like DuckDNS or Route 53. However, you do require a domain, but I do have a workaround for that. Now, I understand that this may seem like a challenging task, but stick with me and we'll go through this together. Okay, so let's just go over a couple of diagrams here to help you better understand what I'm talking about when it comes to port forwarding and CGNATs. So a carrier grade NAT is essentially just like this. You have your internet, and your internet service provider has an IP address on that network. And they provide you with a IP address or a gateway, and this is your IP address of your home computer. So they don't actually give you a public-facing IP address. So if you wanted to, from the internet, connect to your computer, you can't actually do that, because if you were to type in this IP address, nothing would come up. So what you can do is, from your ISP, ask for a public-facing IP address, and then they would supply you, if they allow it, that public IP address where from the internet, if you were to type in, let's say this address was 24.0.47.130, then if you were browsing from the internet and you typed in that IP address, you'd be able to access your home computer. So now with double CGNAT, as we can see here, it's a way of your ISP expanding their networks. So it's the same setup as the CGNAT, except now they have another network set up and a router or a switch. And there would be many of these switches that would supply a little network to a bunch of home users, and then you'd have another one supplying another group of home users. So port forwarding, the way that works, if you have a public-facing IP address, you type it into your browser, and then it comes to your modem that is provided by your ISP or however they bring your connection in. And then you would have a rule set up that would forward all of that information to a certain service that you have running on your network. This requires you to open ports, and typically it's HTTP access. You can get HTTPS by getting certificates, but that is how port forwarding works. So a reverse proxy allows you to get your HTTPS, and instead of typing in an IP address, that's where you can type in a domain if you purchase one, and then it would come to your reverse proxy and it goes, oh, whenever I see this home.example.com, I know to forward that off to this IP address for Home Assistant. Again, this still requires a public-facing IP address, a domain, and it requires you to open ports. Now, with tunneling, you don't require any open ports. You still require a domain, but you're creating a direct connection or a tunnel through the internet to your service that you're running in your local network. So whenever you go to this home.example.com, a tunnel is created and then it connects you directly to that service. As for the requirements, as I previously stated, you will need to acquire a domain for what I'm about to teach you, and you need a free Cloudflare account. So full disclosure here, I paid $24.13 Canadian for my domain from GoDaddy for a year. And that's all I need to pay. So that's only $2.01 each month, which is $7.82 less than what Nabukasa charges. So I think it's a worthwhile investment to pay for the domain, and you get to have some fun learning in the process. So now that we have the basics down, it's time to get our hands dirty. And just to make sure that we're all on the same page, here is the current versions that I'm running on my Raspberry Pi at the time of recording. You can find yours by going to Settings and About. And here they are here. So Cloudflare is a DNS provider that offers impressive performance, encryption, and privacy protections for its users. Not only that, but they offer this all for free. And we're going to take advantage of their Argo Tunnel software to encrypt and securely transfer our data to ensure that our Home Assistant instance is safe no matter where you're hosting it. So they do have different options available, and we're going to be going with the free tier. So we're going to leverage this secure tunnel to connect to our Home Assistant instance using a great add-on developed by Tobias Brenner. This enables us to connect our Home Assistant instance to the internet without having to open any ports. And you can use the Cloudflare Zero Trust dashboard to further protect your connection. However, that's discussed in the advanced configuration of his add-on and is not covered in this video. So I recommend reviewing his documentation if you want to pursue this. Again, as mentioned, you must own a domain, and I did mention that if you don't want to buy one, you can follow an article that Tobias produced on how to get one for free, which I'll link to. Okay, so getting this up and running is rather simple, but there is a few criteria that we must meet first. I've already said that you need a domain, but that domain must be within Cloudflare's control. So if you don't already have a free Cloudflare account, go ahead and create one now, and then you can just put them in charge of your DNS. I've linked to an article on how to do this. And if you've chosen to use GoDaddy as your registrar, there is another article that I'll link to as well. If you choose someone else, however, you will have to search how to add custom name servers to that registrar of choice. Once you've completed that, you can check if it is active by going to Cloudflare's dashboard, and there should be a green check mark in the section for your domain. But you should have received an email saying the transfer was successful. And just to show you what I'm talking about, if I log into my dashboard, you can see here that it is active. So in order to do that, we would just click on the Add Site, and you just enter in your domain, click Add Site, and a wizard will pop up telling you what you have to do. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, you're going to appreciate how quick this is. Okay, so we need to navigate to Settings and then Add-ons. And now we're going to click on the Add-on Store. And at the top here, you'll see these 3 dots. Just click on that and then click on repositories, which brings us to this manage add-on repositories. And here, let's just make that a little bigger. So then all we have to do is paste in Tobias's GitHub repository and click add. And that's it. Now we just hit close. And all we have to do is refresh the page. And now we can see a new add-on called Cloudflare, or if you don't see it, just type in cloud and it will pop up right there. So now if we click into that, on his documentation, like I said, I highly recommend reading this. There's a lot of good information in here. But we're going to start the install. So we just click the install button, and as soon as that is installed, we'll continue on. Okay, so once it is installed, before we hit start, we do need to add a few lines to our configuration.yaml. And basically, it's just going to add some information to our header request. And this just tells Home Assistant that we trust the source to access our instance. Otherwise, when you try to load Home Assistant, you're just going to get a 400 bad request error. You can find all of this in the documentation, but you can use either Studio Code Server or a file editor to edit your configuration.yaml. And what you're going to do is go ahead and paste the HTTP component into there, And we're going to use _x_forwarded_4 true. And that basically is just telling the browser to pass on your IP address to Home Assistant. And then for the trusted proxies, what we are doing to further explain what's happening is because this add-on runs locally on our instance and because Home Assistant prevents requests from proxies and reverse proxies, we're instructing Home Assistant to trust the Docker network, which is the IP address that we see here. And I'm doing a range, so the entire range, which is what the /24 means. So in a sense, I'm whitelisting a set of IP addresses for Home Assistant to trust. So now that that's in there, we'll just close and we'll have to go to Developer Tools and check configuration and restart. So we'll just let that restart. And as soon as it restarts, then we're going to return to the Cloudflare add-on and we're going to go to the configuration tab as there is some configuration that we have to make some changes to. All right, so if we go to settings and add-ons and we go to our Cloudflare, in the configuration tab, our external host name that we want to pick. So you could pick anything like example.com. This example.com, this is a domain that you purchased. So whatever it is that you've purchased, you would put in there. So in my case, I will do that. And then I will click save. So for the advanced configuration, which you'll find in the documentation, you can set up additional hosts. So let's say you want to run ESP Home. You could set up a host that, or a subdomain that's esp.yourdomain.com. And you would be able to have access to it. Node-RED is another one. Lots of possibilities. Okay, so now we can go back over to the info tab and hit start. And now that it's started, we have to go over to the log. And what's going to happen is it's going to spit out a web page that we need to copy and navigate to authorize Cloudflare to create this tunnel. And that's it. So I just hit refresh here. So here is the web page, as I said. So if we just go to that web page and we just choose, my list has multiple sites, but yours might just have the one that you just transferred there. You just click on it and click authorize, and it was successful. So now if we were to go to that home dot we should be presented with our login, and there we go. So now all we have to do is put in our login. And now we have remote access to our Home Assistant instance. And you can now link this address to the mobile app, and you can really start unleashing the power of Home Assistant. Well, my friends, if you've made it this far, I really appreciate you. If you haven't yet, please click subscribe. I love making these videos, but they do take up a bit of my time, researching, filming, and editing. So by subscribing, you'll help support the channel. I hope you discovered something useful today. As always, please share your thoughts in the comment section, and I hope to see you in future videos. Goodbye.